I'm pleased to welcome you to a conversation about peace building in practice. First, I'd like to welcome our distinguished guest, Dr. Harsha Kumara Navaratne, founder chairman of the Sevalanka Foundation in Sri Lanka. Mr. Harsha, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
I'm privileged to be with you and honored to be with you.
Thank you very much. We're also joined by Dr. Atsushi Sunami, president of the Sasakawa Peace Foundation. Dr. Sunami, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So as mentioned, for our discussion today, we'll be looking into the concept of peace building in practice. So first, I would like to ask Mr. Harsha, given your decades of experience working in communities and on the ground in Sri Lanka, as well as your very international perspective as well, I hope you can tell us about what the current situation is in Sri Lanka at this time. What is happening on the ground?
Well, I have to first tell you that there were several other personalities who have committed to bring peace back to Sri Lanka. You know, when peace building, there are several roles to play. My role is mostly in development aspect, where people, when they were lost their houses and they were in the refugee camps. So our task with Nippon Foundation and the Sasakawa Peace Foundation was really bringing back these people back to their home. That is how we started the peace building. But there were many other actors. You know, when peace building is there are several roles, very important roles. One is human rights, So there were a lot of human rights defenders in Sri Lanka who have committed a lot with a lot of challenges by various challenges they faces. Then there are people who really train others on peace building. So all of them have contributed a lot. So my role was really bringing back people to their own homes, because these people have left everything. They lost everything. They were pain. They were sad. They were angry. They lost everything. So bringing back them to, altogether 350,000 people were lost their houses, and they lost their breadwinners. They lost their people. So for us, bringing back them to their original places was not a simple thing, because you have to give them a confidence. You have to give them, that you have a future. Your children will get education. You will go back and build your own economy. So if you really look at the present situation, we have done a huge work with the international community. After the 30 years of war, the first outsider who have gone to the war area, where everything was broken, there were no roads, houses were broken, no schools, nothing, bridges were broken. The first person who visited was actually Sasakawa-san. He visited, and he has promised to our president, to our country, to our people, that Nippon Foundation and Sasakawa Peace Foundation will help. So Nippon Foundation will started, building up houses, schools, and we have built up 100 schools. And the Sasakawa Peace Foundation bring the other experiences, bringing we started with all the religious leaders. We have bring them together. They were angry with each other. It was not possible for a Buddhist monk to sit with other Catholic priests and Muslim imams, but they all got together and discussed everything, and that is how we have built up peace in the country. Today, the people have gone back, and people do not remember. Most of the youngsters cannot remember there was a war for 30 years, right? So I think Sri Lanka is one of the best places where reconciliation and reintegration was done. But still, a lot of things has to be done, because there are certain aspects in Sri Lanka where some of the extreme groups, with the nationalism and all kind of other stuff, are still disturbing the building of the peace. So some of us and other people like human rights defenders, other peace builders, we all are working towards the real long-term peace.
I want to touch on that point you mentioned, of course, with 30 years of conflict and then a long peace mediation process. What were some of the difficulties or challenges experienced in that process, and what did you learn from that experience?
One thing is, the most important thing is we have a 1.5 million diaspora, the people who have left Sri Lanka. Out of that 1.5 million, around 1 million is actually from a minority Tamil groups who have left due to war, due to this conflict. So they have gone with the pain. They have gone with, certain of them are gone with anger. So the diaspora community still do not know what's going on back in Sri Lanka. And they were refugees. And since I was a High Commissioner in Canada, I met some of them and I have listened to them, Some of them have lost their father, some of them have lost their mother, everything they have lost. So they only can remember what has happened to them. But they do not know now things are come back to normal and, you can go. Now if you go to Colombo, there are certain areas only the Tamil communities are living with peacefully. You can go anywhere, everywhere. But those things are not so much, known to those people who are in a diaspora community. And I don't blame them, but they feel like, they still think, it was an injustice. It was something which has done by the majority community to them. That's why they were like that. So it's a huge challenge because if you really look at it in Canadian point of view, right, the minority votes are the vote base is very strong. So if you really look at it, myself, Indian High Commissioner, in Bangladesh High Commissioner, we always, when we get together in Ottawa, we discuss that. Because of this minority vote base, even the government decisions are so much biased to that. They don't, whenever I have met foreign ministry people, I can understand that they really see, they don't look at it, the reality. So when you're asking about the challenges, international community sometimes do not understand, the real issues back home. They were just looking at their own perspective, and most probably they are looking at other, if you compare with the Middle East or an African country with the Asian country, our culture is different. Our way of thinking is different. How we live is different. Our civilization and values are different. So these are two different way of looking at it. So the one of the biggest challenges is the Western way of looking at peace building is another challenge. So there are two challenges in outside, that is diaspora and also the Western way of looking at the peace building. Internally there are a lot of extremists because in the South people think we are winners, right? In the North people feel like we are losers, right? So when there is that psychological barrier, one group is thinking, oh, we won. Why should we have to do this and that, right? There are certain injustices happened to the minority. So this has to be done through a justice, through human right value systems. But if those things are not done, we have not really done the right thing for the people who were affected, who were victims, right? From that is how the winners are looking at. So some of the extreme groups from the South do not understand there are international, obligation for a country to look into the, injustice, what has happened. And people who have lost their breadwinners, what has happened to them? Where are they? That has to be answered. Then the minority group also has to come and understand now the war is finished. We have to integrate, we have to look into that. things like that. So those are some of the internal challenges. If you really go back to historical perspective, they were actually looking at, the more, their own way of governing in the north and east. So then there has to be a constitutional aspect also. That's need to be done. So those are internal challenges. I hope, the new government and new president is as committed to do some of those things and carry on. So we hope in coming future there will be a more positive results.
And I'm curious, as someone who's been working, again, with your decades of experience and also experiencing this 30 years of conflict, has your perspective about the concept of peace, how would you define the concept of peace, or has that evolved for you over time? Could you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, since I'm more than a development worker, I started as a filmmaker, so I'm an artist. So now, for last 30 years, I didn't do any film. But immediately after the war finished, we have done a music festival, right? So that was one of our main idea, to bring back the youngsters, to the art, the music, that kind of thing. Because without looking at, without discussing about other aspect, we try to look at it where the youngsters, people can get together. So art was one of the main thing. So for me, even today, when I'm looking back, because now in South Asia, the biggest issue is the radicalization. If you really look at it, the radical, the way how the people, the youngsters don't believe the present democracy. Right? So they feel like the name of democracy, the politicians win the majority vote, and they come, then they try to be, they try to corrupt the whole system. So the youngsters have lost their trust on the system. So when you look at it in the social media, that their anger, that they refuse the present social structure. So for me, I think today's peace building has to be redesigned in a differently, thinking about how we can change the way how these youngsters are thinking, because their answer is coming out with hate speech, right? And they sometimes looked into the fake news, because social media is so strong. So presently, yesterday also I talked to Sasakawa's son that whether we can look into a more artistically to turn this social media into a more, more music, more culture, more art, work together with some of the leading, the music universities in India and Thailand and Sri Lanka, get together, work together and bring youngsters where their message can be artistically, in more non-violent way, to bring it up. So present day challenge is this: how to bring social media into a more positive look at it. So to do that in a way that we need to look at it more into the cinematic, music, art, culture. So that is something that I'm just looking at. I'm just returned from India, meeting some of the cultural people, because that Bollywood is so influential in South and Southeast Asia. So I'm more interested about to learn more about the Korean music is influencing a lot in South Asia. So it's very important that something that I would like to discuss with Sasakawa Peace Foundation and Nippon Foundation, whether we can do something in Southeast Asia and South Asia to work on, based on culture, music, art, to bring the social media messages for youngsters, to bring them out of this hate speech and things like that, because their energy is very important. Their power is very important. They are the future. 50% of our population is under 30 years old. So that is something that we need to be. So when you're asking about challenges on the future, present peace, I think bringing youngsters back to positively answer their challenges in democratic society.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sunami, I'd be interested to hear about your response to these comments. Was there anything that struck you? I think we covered a lot of context in Sri Lanka, but also talking about the power of music and art and how that plays into these discussions as well. Wondering if you had any thoughts.
Well, first of all, I think the idea to actually separate some of the process that are going on in the peace building, depending on the phases of the development, and of course, at the moment people are looking at the conflict areas as before they even reach the ceasefire agreement. In other words, how to stop the killing first, and once you reach to that phase, and then we have to start thinking how to build the new society that harmonizes the two sides and the conflicted area to take away some of the angers and some of the things that would then bring peace more permanently. But that's a very idealistic way of thinking. There's a lot of work we need to do. And going back to the concept of community building. That's where I think the key essence is to how much do you understand the community in the first place. If you're coming in from outside of the community trying to support the peace building process in that particular communities, and that's where we really need to understand the cultures and history and so on and so forth, because a lot of the conflict areas goes way back in the history.
Perfectly.
It just doesn't start today. You just some of the it goes back to the birth of certain religions and communities building around it, some of the institutions that are being maybe 100 years and so on and so forth, that are always built in order to really, it doesn't really necessarily constructed in a way that all different parts of beliefs and different diversified ethnic backgrounds and so on and so forth to be under sort of harmonized in a way that the institutions are built. I mean, most of them are quite unstable, and it's because it's a dynamic process that's going on. So, how can we then redesign, as you are saying, that of the new sort of communities that more, considered, more acceptable to diversities and the differences and so on and so forth. And that's a very important process. And in that, the idea of understanding the community is very important.
Yes.
And working with the community and getting a trust from the community, particularly if you're, from the conflict area where they are actually killing each other,
Yes.
and how you then sit down and try to build the same one community that can both of or each side can look at their future in that particular setting. And so a lot of work needs to be done. And the other thing is the youth generation, because that's where next generation is the one that has to make this peace sustainable. So the next generation both needs to be, education, de-radicalization, something that they need, their new sort of, something that they can be hopeful about their future lives. And so there are a lot of things need to do. So I think the experience in Sri Lanka and Mr. Harsh is, bringing into this conversation is very important.
Thank you very much. I'm hoping to jump off on some points that came up in both of your comments about the fact that it's very important to understand the context and to be of the region or to be well aware of what's happening on the ground. So from Sri Lanka's perspective and based on this conversation we've been having, I hope you can talk a bit about why it's important to incorporate an Asian perspective into the peace building process. So what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't totally reject some of the Western way of thinking and some of their, studies and some of their way of working is okay. But what I'm worried is, sometimes the donor-led, I'm underlining that, donor-led peace training programs sometimes do have agendas, right? You can remember that when President Trump, when he became a president, he said that US aid funds were diverted or invested in our part of the world to do the political changes, regime change. He himself said that's one of the reasons that he said he's closing the US aid. So this is not what we say, So what I'm trying to say is some of the Western donor-led peace programs were very much suspected by our own communities because of their agendas. You see?
Yes.
So the country like Sri Lanka is more, 72% of the community is Buddhist and Hindus, right? So most of the Western way of looking at this is more Christian, Catholic, value-based. What I'm saying, I'm studied in a Catholic university, so there are so many things I learned from, my whole life was trained by one of the bishops in Manila. I always remember him as my guru. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about some of those aspects, that civilizational aspect from the West is not going to fit into a civilizational aspect of the Asia. So that's what I'm saying. So some of the work, look at what Mr. Sasakawa has done in Myanmar, he as a Japanese personality, he has succeeded more than how many times American and a Norwegian have visited the Burma. But no one has succeeded to bring these fighting youngsters into a round table. But Sasakawa-san has succeeded. So what I'm saying is, why is that? Because that come from an Asian background. That value system, you go and you listen to people. You don't, for me as a student, I look at it from the West, it's more comes a theories and a kind of dogmas. But in the East, it's more philosophical. We come from a very philosophical background. So we are listening. We don't impose. We don't go and say, you have to listen to me and you have to turn into my religion or my language. We don't say that. That's a very Western kind of way of thinking. So East, our part of the world, our civilizationalists, we listen to people. We like to be together like a family, right? We treat like that. So that's a very different way of working with the peace building. Just like Dr. Sunami just mentioned, the community. Most important thing is how you are looking at building up a trust in a community. Yes. As long as the community, the people don't trust you, you can't do any peace work back home. So for that, you need to understand their values, how they're thinking, how they treat each other. Without understanding that, you can't build a peace. That's why I'm just telling you that our part of the world, when you are peace building, it has to come from our value system, our civilizational value system, rather than from the Western way of thinking. But as I told you from the beginning, there are certain things that we can learn from them, but not the models and their agendas.
Dr. Sunami, I'm curious, with that background, what unique perspectives does Japan bring to the table when it comes to peace building?
Well, again, peace building is a process that depends heavily on the context when you're talking about peace building. I spent several days actually as when I became the president of the foundation in Belfast, listening to the people who used to, fight for the independence or the separation from the British to, Northern Ireland, and or the generations of this conflict. And now, of course, they are finding a way to settle in a process, that common process, political process that used to be the radical, activists turning into a political party, and they value more dialogue and the political process than fighting and guerrilla warfare. And so you listen to these people, and then you realize how deep in their community that first of all, this conflict that is really rooted. And so how Asian in that process would really be part of the community? It's not. I mean, it's a different history, different community, has its own unique rooted problems and issues that they need to themselves has to solve. And either within the there's, it's a Catholic Church community versus, a British, Protestant, more like Protestant, argument going on. And so it's, as a Buddhist myself, I mean, it's hard to really engage. But I learned a lot from that process, of course, because at the end of the day, they have to find who is the winner, but who is the loser. But also, the loser has to accept the loss. The winner had to understand how the losers felt by losing.
Right. Perfect, right.
And then they have to share this common future from that point of view. And so it's a same thing. But Asians, for us, it's more like a different way of manifesting this process, this feeling, right? You have to make sure that if you lose a conflict, or if you lose, the losers has to save their face in an Asian way, and to be dignified, and to be honorable about accepting the loss. In a similar way, I guess in the Western conflicts, they're the same way. But it's just a different way of expressing this in their own context, their own culture. So there is very similarity about peace building, but then in a detail, there are a lot of unique, deep-rooted issues that goes with it. And otherwise, if you don't understand this, you cannot go in there and then say, let's you guys start talking about the peace, or you're there, this is your future. That won't work. And Mr. Harsha is right, because most of the mediation in the world today are led by Norwegians or Switzerland or more Western sort of organized foundations like ours. With the donor led, and the donor would say, "Look, here's what I want you to do. Go in there. In 10 years, you find the peace for them."
Yes.
Okay. So so the donor is sitting out there and saying, "Look, where is the result?" Right. So you come back in 5 years, show me the result. And of course, you go in there trying to find a way to, to show them the process of peace building. But the donor said, no, that's not what I expected. That's not I think what the peace is, right? I want to see the election happening. I want to see my understanding of what the democracy is, and then beyond, and the democracy is the best and only solution for the peace. And what do you mean by the democracy? Is something that donor thinks that is the answer to. And so if you are in this sort of process, the people on the ground that are doing work we often work with them, even Southeast Asian context. You know, the Swiss and and British and other partners on the ground. They understand the difficulties.
Yeah.
But they are being behind them. There's a donor there.
Yeah, right.
So they are asked to do what the donor is asking them to do.
Yeah.
So that's the mechanism, right? The Sasakawa Peace Foundation, we don't have a donor. We have our own, luckily, our own resources that we can go and then we can say, okay, 10 years, fine. Of course, that's 10 years. We have to do this. You know, we always finding the different issues, different things as we go around building peace, and we can, we can stay with them. We can be with them. Then to see how the community develop as they want to see that community develop. Not that we don't have to answer the donors.
Yeah.
And on that point, I would like to talk a bit about the Sasakawa Peace Foundation and what potentially you've laid out its unique ability or unique role in the peace building field. I wonder if you could talk about any future plans that are coming up with the Sasakawa Peace Foundation specifically.
So we are establishing the Center for Mediation Support. The idea of mediation support is, of course, under the United Nations. What are the activities, what are the programs are considered to be mediation support is clearly laid out. And we are part of this network of peace mediation support community. But way we address these programs, the way we address what the process of peace mediation support is defined by our own experience. And our own experience comes from Asia. So look at the list of the groups, the organizations that are part of this network. We are the very minority. I think we are the only Asian foundation that really signed up in this community from the first early phase of this UN activities. And so we are, of course, bringing our experience to the community from Asian perspective, which they value very tremendously, because some of the areas of conflict, not only Asian itself, but then the place like Middle East or West Asia or even Latin America, there are many conflict areas that are non-West. Basically, they have their own traditional cultures. They have their own traditional way of building community. And so the peace mediation support needs the variety of approaches to fit into the particular, the unique setting of those conflicts. But of course, the overall, we all wanted to have, first of all, a stop killing, and find a system or mechanisms that, decommissioning the weapons and other things, and then find a reconstruction process, and then build a new community, and then educating the next generations away from hate and revenge, anger, all these things. Because history that really always is going to be there.
Yeah, right.
How do you understand this history in the future so that this doesn't come back to them?
Correct.
And to keep building the trust of those community inside. So these are common issues that we all share, but the approach is very different, and the timeline is very different. So in that case, our foundations is what we expected from the other foundations and that are committed to peace mediation, to bring our own unique experience. And of course, the experience in Sri Lanka is one of the very important experience of how to find the peace and sustainable community that is looking for development together with those conflicted parties. So.
And Mr. Harsha, I would love to hear about your expectations for this center that's being set up at the Sasakawa Peace Foundation, or if you had any advice in terms of what kind of mediation support should be provided?
Well, as Dr. Sunami mentioned, when it comes to the mediation, it's always comes from the West. So I'm very happy that Sasakawa Peace Foundation have decided to set it up such an institute, such a program. Because, from the whole discussion today, what I'm trying to emphasize is just look at it. Peace building in Asian and our civilizational point of view. Otherwise, South and Southeast Asian peace building is not something it is easy to do by different kind of existing models. So I'm very happy, and I congratulate Sasakawa Peace Foundation that just starting this media center.
Thank you very much. Is there any advice that you could provide us as well? I know it's difficult to suddenly...
Well, there are so many other people, who are from our part of the world, who has done a lot of work in this. So I think it's good for Sasakawa Peace Foundation to get some of those people also, to help you. And I know there are a lot of people from India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, who has done a lot of work in mediation. So that will be contributing factor to strengthen your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. So I have one last, in conclusion, for our final question. I would like to ask to both of you for a message to future generations. So for those young people who are interested in peace building and the discussions that we've been having today, what message would you like to send to them? And perhaps I'll start with Dr. Sunami, if I could.
Well, first of all, I think the experience that I had when I was growing up in a society very different from what today's young generations are facing, particularly with a common use of internet and how they connect to each other and how they communicate to each other, how they're looking at the world through the lens of internet, YouTubes, and so on and so forth, where when I grew up, a lot of information were coming from books, newspapers, lectures by the professors and teachers, and in-person communications, not so much of this overwhelming amount of information that you can get it in seconds in your palm. I mean, that's a very different world that I personally still struggling with, and to find the trust among people that comes from different background, different religious beliefs or values in this context, in this environment, is something that is maybe a challenge, maybe an opportunity for young generations. But I hope that they will find the way to actually, either virtually or even physically, to build the community for them that can, based on the trust and be more sort of confident about their future, that their lives are safe, they're free to do what they would like to speak or even think, or even get educated, or even have the a life that is not being forced by how or where and which family you're born to, but that you have your own dreams and live their lives as they wish to be, and that's a big challenge. But I hope that the youth there, they can find their own way of. I don't know. I mean, hopefully not so much of peace mediation that they need to do in the future.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And Mr. Harsha as well, for young people who care about peace and want to take action, what is your message to them?
Our part of the world, the young people have, shown their strength. If you really look at India, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, even they were got together and changed the political, the structures, and they looked at it, what is best for them. So if you really look at it, the youngsters have such a powerful strength, and they really look at it. This society has to be changed, right? That is something very important. So the only issue that I'm worried is that the means that they are used to do the changes. They have to be very careful, because they need to understand about how you can bring your message positively. And when you are looking at South Asia, there are several challenges. One is a lot of drugs are coming in from various parts of the world, and a lot of youngsters in using drugs. That they have to be very careful, because their brothers, their sisters can be affected by the drugs. That's one thing. Second thing is, the social media, that they need to be careful with the fake news, and also the violent way of addressing the issue. So for the youngsters, it is very important to have a non-violence communication, because the world is belong to them. So they need to see that they build a positive world, So in our part, as Dr. Sunami said, when we were studied, we were listening to our professors, we were listening to our mother, we were listening to our teachers, gurus, But today youngsters don't look at it like that. They look at it more than the values. They look at it what they are getting from a social media. That they need to be careful, understand that if they can have a balance between their own value system, their family, their community, and also what they get from a social media. So if they can have a balance and look at it on the future, we will have a very good, peaceful and prosperous society.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sunami, Mr. Harsha, for all of your insights and for this wonderful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.